It's exactly 6 p.m. now, Cairo local time. It's a very good evening to our viewers and welcome to Channel 2's English News Bulletin. I'm Angie Meher and we begin with the headlines. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi directs a follow-up on the health condition of the great artist Mohammed Subhi. First phase of the 2025 House of Representatives elections in Egypt enters second and last day. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli chairs weekly cabinet meeting on domestic files. Welcome back. Now the details in full. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi directed the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Health, Dr. Khalid Abdel Ghaffar, to follow up on the health condition of the great artist and actor Mohammed Subhi and provide him all the forms of necessary medical support to ensure that he receives a comprehensive health care. The President also urged the need to prepare detailed reports on his health condition and follow up on his status continuously. Mohammed Subhi suffered a sudden health issue and was transferred to hospital to receive medical care and undergo the necessary examinations. The first phase of the 2025 House of Representatives elections in Egypt entered its second and last day on Tuesday. Earlier, the head of the Executive Office of the National Election Authority, Ahmed al-Bandari, said the vote was proceeding regularly and noted that the authority had applied the latest technology for voters to be knowledgeable on all the information related to the election process. He said the first day of voting witnessed a high turnout and he expects Tuesday to witness high numbers of voters. We have the details.
All polling stations in the governorates taking part in the first phase of Egypt's House of Representatives elections opened on Tuesday morning, except one station in Badra, Giza. Councillor Ahmed Bandari, Executive Director of the National Election Authority, announced. Speaking at a press conference to review the progress of the second day of voting, Bandari said the NEA is investigating the reason for the delay at the Badra station to ensure that voters can cast their ballots there. He added that the voting process is running smoothly across all governorates included in the first phase and called on citizens to participate and choose their representatives in the new parliament. Bandari noted that the NEA's Central Operations Room continues to monitor the election and provide updates to the public. He confirmed that voting will continue until 9 p.m., the official closing time for polling stations, with extensions allowing that where voters remain inside their premises. Ballot counting will begin afterwards and participation figures will be announced, though final results will be released later. The first phase of the 2025 House of Representatives elections covers 14 governorates: Giza, Beni Suef, Minya, Asyut, Sohag, Qina, Luxor, Aswan, the Red Sea, the New Valley, Fayoum, Alexandria, Matruh, and Bahira. About 35 million citizens are eligible to vote in this phase. The second phase will take place on the 21st and 22nd of November for Egyptians abroad and the 24th, 25th of November inside Egypt, covering the remaining 13 governorates. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli praised the efforts of various state institutions, the National Elections Authority, the Egyptian diplomatic missions in ensuring the smooth and orderly conduct of the electoral process. A total of 1,281 candidates are competing for individual seats alongside a single electoral list in the West Delta and the Central South and North Upper Egypt sectors for seats allocated under the list system. The national list for Egypt, led by the Mustaqbal Watan party, is the leading for the list-based seats after winning a vast majority in the Senate elections held a few months ago. The second phase of the elections will take place on November 21st and 22nd for expatriates and November 24th and 25th domestically in the running 13 governorates. Parliamentary elections are divided between closed party lists and individual candidates. The Constitution stipulates that at least 25% of the members of Parliament must be women.
The head of the Executive Committee of the National Election Authority, Councillor Ahmed Bandari, held a press conference to follow up on the voting process on the second day of the 2025 first phase of the House of Representatives elections. He said the authority is closely following up on the electoral process to ensure a smooth and transparent voting for Egyptians in the 14 governorates in the first phase of the parliamentary elections. He called on all Egyptians to take part in the electoral process and practice their constitutional right, adding that the authority has observed high turnout during the second day of the voting. Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli held a press conference following the weekly cabinet meeting. The Prime Minister stressed the state's keenness and interest to intensify efforts to enhance the communications and information technology sector, being one of the main economic sectors alongside industry, tourism and agriculture. Presiding over the weekly cabinet meeting, Madbouli said the state attaches as top priority the communications sector, adding that President Sisi is closely following up on efforts to upgrade this vital sector, citing its significant role in increasing the exports volume and digital services, as well as improving Egypt's competitiveness in markets worldwide. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli called on businessmen and investors of the Gulf Cooperation Council to increase investments in Egypt in a way to achieve mutual benefits. During his participation in the Egyptian Gulf Trade and Investment Forum, currently taking place in Cairo, Madbouli stressed the significance of the private sector's role in enhancing investment, trade and economic ties between Egypt and the Gulf states. He added that Egyptian Gulf relations represent a model of strategic partnership extended over decades, supported by shared political will. Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli also chaired a meeting to follow up on developments in the implementation of the free trade agreement signed earlier. The cabinet spokesperson said the meeting reviewed recent developments regarding executive steps in the free trade agreement signed between Egypt and a number of partners on both bilateral and multilateral levels, with the aim to enhance cooperation and economic ties. The meeting highlighted the agreement's role in supporting the state's efforts in localizing domestic industry and enhancing its access to global markets. Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli also stressed the state is working to support the national press institutions and the National Media Authority in reforming their financial and administrative situations in line with President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's directives. Prime Minister's remarks came during a meeting to follow up on efforts to improve the financial and administrative situations of the national press institutions and National Media Authority and settle outstanding debts owed to various state bodies. The Foreign Minister Badr Abdelati arrived in Port Sudan City on Tuesday. He is to hold talks with senior Sudanese officials in Sudan over boosting cooperation between the two sides. He's also to exchange views over developments in the crisis in Sudan and means of boosting efforts to reach a comprehensive settlement that would protect security and stability of the country. Minister of Foreign Affairs, Immigration and Expatriates Badr Abdelati received on Monday the Secretary of the Security Council of the Russian Federation, Sergei Shoigu, within the framework of ongoing efforts to strengthen the long-standing strategic partnership agreement. Abdelati expressed his appreciation for the deep-rooted ties with Russia and its commitment to promote cooperation in various fields. Meeting tackled progress exerted in major joint projects, topping them the Daban nuclear power plant and the Russian industrial zone and Suez Canal economic zone. Regarding the situation in Gaza, Abdelati reviewed Egypt's ongoing efforts to cement ceasefire arrangements and agreements and the necessity to move to the second phase. He also discussed preparations for the Cairo International Conference on Early Recovery and Reconstruction in Gaza. The meeting also touched on the latest developments in the Ukrainian crisis. Abdelati reaffirmed Egypt's call for a peaceful diplomatic resolution that preserves regional and international stability. Moreover, the two sides stressed their commitment to support stability and development in the Middle East. And aid continues flocking to the Gaza Strip through the Rafah land port within the framework of efforts to alleviate the suffering of the Palestinians in the Strip. The Egyptian Red Crescent announced the launching of the 70th aid convoy of Zed al-Izza from Egypt to Gaza. Convoy includes tons of trucks carrying food, medical aid, relief supplies, all to meet the needs of the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, the Israeli occupation forces continued their aggression on Jenin city and the camp for the 295th consecutive day, with more incursions, home searches, and impediment for Palestinians' movement. The forces also stormed early this morning the city of Betonia, west of Ramallah, in the occupied West Bank. They moved their military vehicles in the streets of the city and fired sound and gas bombs. Palestinian news agency reported the occupation forces also stormed an area in West Bethlehem and arrested a child after raiding his parents' home. Israeli occupation forces also stormed the city of Tobas with a number of patrols and house incursions. Meanwhile, the Israeli parliament has advanced a bill that would mandate the death penalty for Palestinian prisoners. In a vote held late overnight, the first of four needed for the measure to become law, the bill passed with 39 in favor and 16 against out of 120 lawmakers. The PLO, the Palestinian National Umbrella political group, condemned the vote, with the Palestinian National Council speaker calling the draft law a political, legal, and humanitarian crime. The vote was also criticized by Hamas. The bill will now move to a parliamentary committee for further debate before a second and third vote. It is not guaranteed it will become law, with several key political parties having boycotted overnight's initial vote. U.S. officials said that Syria is joining the global coalition against the Daesh terrorist group. This came hours after U.S. President Donald Trump welcomed his Syrian counterpart, Ahmed al-Shara, for a historic White House visit. During the talk, Syria announced it is joining the global coalition to defeat the Daesh terrorists, becoming the 90th member of the alliance and partnering with the U.S. to eliminate the terrorist group. According to U.S. officials, Syria will also be allowed to resume diplomatic ties with Washington to further counter terrorism, security, and economic coordination. Trump said Syria was a big part of his plan for a wider Middle East peace plan, which the U.S. president is hoping will prop up the fragile ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. Iraqis headed to the polls on Tuesday to vote in a parliamentary election marked by tight security and a boycott by a major political bloc. A total of 8,703 polling stations were open across the country for the general election. Turnout was sparse in the early hours Tuesday's polling stations, and initial results were expected Wednesday. Only 21.4 million out of the total of 32 million eligible voters updated their information and obtained voter cards ahead of the polling, a decrease from the last parliamentary elections in 2021, when about 24 million voters registered. Election is taking place against the backdrop of major shifts in the region over the past 2 years. Ukraine's military said it struck a Russian oil refinery in the city of Orsk in Russia's Orenburg region on Tuesday. The statement said explosions and a fire had been observed on the premises. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky visited the frontline city of Kherson Tuesday, which is only a few kilometers from Russian positions across the Dnieper River and faces constant bombardment and attacks by drones. Zelensky said he would hold a meeting Tuesday with local officials and military representatives about defending the city, which is struggling with the ever-increasing threat of small Russian attack drones. Now moving to some business news, the Egyptian bourse closed mixed Tuesday amid purchases by local Arab and foreign corporations and investment funds against sell-offs by local and Arab investors. The market capital of listed companies lost 2 billion Egyptian pounds, reaching 2.886 trillion pounds at the end of transactions that reached 179.9 billion Egyptian pounds. The benchmark index, EGX30, was down 0.41%, above the 40,000 point mark. Equal weighted index, the EGX70 was up 0.26% and the EGX100 climbed 0.5%. The longest ever U.S. government shutdown moved forward towards an eventual resolution after several Democratic senators broke ranks to join Republicans in a 60-vote vote past a compromising deal, sparking intra-party backlash. Since October the 1st, the first day of the shutdown, more than 1 million federal workers have been unpaid, whilst government benefits and services have been increasingly disrupted. With the stopgap funding bill passed through the Senate, the legislation moves to the House of Representatives for a vote, which, like the Senate, is controlled by the Republicans. Oil prices picked up as analysts focused on potential supply disruption from fresh U.S. sanctions and Ukrainian drone attacks on Russian refineries, although prediction of a crude surplus kept gains in check. U.S. benchmark crude oil settled up 35 cents to $60.38 a barrel. Brent crude, the international standard, gained 43 cents to $64.49 a barrel. Now moving to the exciting world of sports, Germany's coach Julian Nagelsmann is in no mood to test anything in their remaining World Cup qualifiers and only wants to secure 2 wins that will punch their ticket for next year's tournament. The Germans, who travel to Luxembourg before hosting Slovakia on November 17th, will secure a top spot in Group A and automatic qualification to next year's World Cup with 2 wins in their final 2 matches. Germany are in top spot in their group on 9 points ahead of second place Slovakia on goal difference. In Italy, Jannik Sinner began his bid to retain the ATP Finals title with a resounding 7-5, 6-1 win over injury-hit Canadian. And with tennis, we wrap up our sports segment as well as the evening's English News Bulletin here on Channel 2. I'm Angie Meher. Thank you for watching.